Now we are being joined by public affairs analyst Sheson Okwade. Thank you for joining us on the newspaper review this morning.
Good morning, Esther. It's my pleasure to be here.
Great to have you here, sir. I'd like to start this morning with the Nysc scrapping bill. How do you see that? I have some questions for you, but first I'll ask, how did you perceive that bill, the second reading, ongoing?
Yes, well, going by the reasons and the excuse by the House of Rep member, reason 8, maybe it's something we'll say it's okay, but to me, it's not to be scrapped. That's my personal view. There are more advantage with that idea than scrapping it. Government should get straight to the business of providing security and welfare, because the idea behind NYSC is beyond what we are faced with. It's the politician that, and they should not look for shortcuts. They should do what is right and let NYSC still stay.
Okay, so I'd like to go back to the time when you served and ask you the question. Did you serve in your region, you know, your own original part of the country where you come from, or you served in another region?
Yeah, I served in my region,
okay,
but I didn't know how that happened. I served in my region and I didn't press for it. I didn't do anything.
Now, I understand that it's very possible that you could serve in your region, but now I want to move it to two reasons why this bill was moved. Was first for the security situation, so that innocent corps members will not be in the line of insecurity challenges in the local community, and secondly because agencies, according to the report here, that agencies, private and public agencies, are no longer recruiting qualified people to work for their companies. Now, are these reasons not valid enough to make this move? Because you called it a shortcut, actually.
Yeah, on the short term, the reasons are valuable. But I would say, rather than you saying you want to scrap, you can suspend it and work on the policies to modify the package and see how we can launch it back. What are some of the benefits this NYSC has provided? It has fostered unity among the youths. The situation where someone will stay in just a particular region for a very long time is being diffused. You can have a feel of what other regions are like. And we've seen instances where, people meet their spouses, their heart rub, even while they are in service. And aside that, it's an avenue, considering the number of years that you have used for academic, years, average of about 17 years, let's say 6 years in primary school, 6 years in secondary school. Let's now put an average without strike of 5 years in tertiary institution. There's supposed to be a break of where you can redefine things. And that's what I feel that 1 year is meant for. Also, it's an avenue for you to upskill yourself in areas you want to go. We've seen that via this NYSC, some people have gone to camp and they became entrepreneurs, even in a strange land, and they decided to settle there. So this thing is to foster unity. But, because the current political leaders have brought division amongst us, so it has made the issue of NYSC to now look at something that everybody is afraid of. I'm not blaming any parent who is not willing to release their son or daughter to go to the north. You can't invest in a child for 17 years and want to risk, him or her to go to the northern part of the nation, not even the northern part, to even go to your state there in the western zone if you are brought up in Lagos, considering the fact that everywhere we are faced with insecurity. So for me, rather than them telling us that they want to scrap it, they should suspend it and put the right thing in place by securing us as expected, and this will give room for more integration among ourselves.
Okay, yeah, you talked about these points that are valid, and now we can see that in Niger State there's a protest. They've blocked highways. We can see that in Benue State 100 farmers have been, according to the report this morning, have been murdered, and in Plateau State here they are still complaining about an insecurity situation that is ongoing. I mean, they just had the reports this morning. First, concerning the protest in Niger State, don't you see that this kind of events going, because they've blocked the highways now and the governor is meeting with the president to have a conversation with him? How do you see this kind of move coming from the citizens, the indigenes, to try to protect their space?
You know, we have appealed to the government that they should do what is needful, rather than what we are seeing now of people resorting to self-defense. Every region is now having an aviation group that is actually looking at ways of shielding and protecting themselves. Quite unfortunate. You know, last week I discussed with you that I plowed the same route from Abuja to Kaduna, but fine, under a very tight security because everybody was afraid. But it's part of the failure of the government to the local government, because you discover that where some of these things are happening are the ungoverned area, where there are failure on the part of the local government for governance to be felt by the people. And they are taking laws into their hands by looking for means of livelihood, which is wrong. And it's really affecting us because it's even telling on the business perspective. Some of us that travels far and wide to carry out business these days cannot do so any longer because it's not safe to go anywhere. We have resulted into just staying in a domain which is not really viable for us economic wise. So I think the federal government calling on the Niger State governor is not about him alone. It's something that must go globally, because the responsibility of the government is to provide security and welfare for the citizen. And in terms of security, the government has failed and they must do something about it.
All right. So now I'm going to move your attention. Now, you mentioned the economy of the nation, and this has made the news this morning. More worries over borrowings and foreign reserves depletion. And the writer here says Nigeria borrowing to fund salaries and trips. That's that particular headline this morning, worrying over borrowings and foreign reserve depletion. Where do you see this move about more borrowings taking the country to?
Yeah, like I always say, borrowing, it's not a sin. But what are you borrowing for? And with the reason that we are borrowing to pay salary and to fund foreign trade, is just we are heading in the wrong direction. Because if you set up an organization and you borrow money to pay salary, is to tell you that that business is no longer viable. Two things must happen. Is either you close down the business and send everybody home, or you re-strategize and see how you can revamp the business and continue to do. We have said to the government severally that until we take the governance as a business enterprise for ourselves, we are not going anywhere. No private organization will go all out to borrow funds to pay salary when he knows that he's not expecting any other fund from anywhere. We all know what the crude oil price is saying. We all know what the foreign exchange is saying. So borrowing to pay salary is wrong. And that is why, for me, even though people did not support what El Rufai did in Kaduna, so many people, if governance is not about creativity, then there is no reason why we should employ you into where you are. So when you're on a seat, we must see the value that you are bringing on the table, just like you have in your organization. Esther, if you are not doing what is needful, I'm sure your employer will show you the way out if you are not adding value to it. So it's high time the government must sit down, re-strategize on the employment level of our people to make sure that they give value to the essence of why they are recruited, or not just what we are saying in civil service. We cannot continue. We can only borrow to build infrastructure, not borrowing to pay salaries or fund outside the country.
Yeah, that moves me to the last question that we're going to have for this morning. We'll probably just have more conversations on this maybe next time we have you on the newspaper review. But for this morning, lastly, federal government bars 22-year aircrafts from Nigeria, releases 5 billion naira aviation bailout. How do you see this 5 billion naira? What's your expectation with this bailout fund in the aviation industry?
Our government has always failed. They are always bailing out sectors but there has never been proper monitoring of some of the funds that is being released to the sector. We've had bailout in the power sector. What improvement has it given to us? We've had bailout too, even in this aviation sector. It's not bailing out that's the problem, because you must definitely look for a way to resuscitate the business. But how much of monitoring are we committed to some of the funds that we have released to the so-called sector that we are actually intending to bail out? So I think on the part of the government, there is a serious failure of proper monitoring for accountability, which has actually created room for more corruption to stride even in our country. So we want a situation where the government will try as much as possible to act what they speak. When you give bailout to the people, monitor what the funds are meant for, make sure that it is actually used for what they are supposed to use it for. And if there are deviation, bring the culprit to justice. Let's start punishing people. And let me just chip this in. It's high time that the government too must shed their weight. The politician must reduce the number of the people that they have their aides as their aides in order for us to enjoy more. We have so many of them having, aides that they need to shed off and give room for good governance so that the people can benefit from the reason of governance.
Thank you very much for your time, for giving us your time this morning, Mr. Sheson Kwade.
It's a pleasure all the time.
Do have a great day ahead. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.